It was 10:17 a.m. in courtroom 3B when the police chief laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, not a slip, a full, sharp laugh that cut across the testimony of a man describing how his face hit the pavement. I was staring at the defendant, Miguel Ramirez, when I heard it. Miguel's hands were trembling on the witness stand, his hospital ID badge still clipped to his belt like he'd run here straight from a shift. He'd just said, "Your Honor," when they slammed me down, I thought. I thought I was going to die. And from the first row of the gallery, in full uniform, gold badge gleaming, chest full of ribbons, the chief of police tilted his head back and laughed. The entire room turned toward him. My clerk froze. Even the court reporter's fingers hovered over the keys. That's when I felt it 20-plus years on this bench, and my stomach still dropped. I tapped my gavel once. Not hard, just enough. Everyone stop. The prosecutors started to rise. The defense attorney half-turned. I kept my eyes on the chief. "Chief Harlan," I said, my voice echoing off the wood paneling, "stand up." And that's when everything changed. Let me take you back about 40 minutes to when that case was first called. Because if you don't understand how we got here, that laugh won't mean what it needs to mean. At 9:39 a.m., my clerk called case number 24CR 1187, State of Riverton versus Miguel Antonio Ramirez. Riverton. Generic mid-sized American city. Enough skyscrapers for a skyline. Enough sirens at night that you stop counting. Courtroom 3B isn't glamorous. Scuffed wooden benches. Fluorescent lights that hum just a little. An air vent above the jury box that rattles when the HVAC kicks in. I've sat on this bench for 23 years. Long enough that I've watched rookie officers retire, seen teenagers come back as parents, and watched more than a few powerful men forget that these four walls are the one place their titles don't shield them from the truth. On paper, this was a simple case. Miguel Ramirez, 27, paramedic, charged with resisting arrest, obstruction of official business, disorderly conduct, all stemming from an incident outside a corner store on June 3rd at 11:52 p.m. According to the police report, Miguel interfered with an ongoing lawful arrest, became physically aggressive, and attempted to incite a hostile crowd while officers tried to detain a juvenile suspect. According to Miguel, he did one thing. He held up his phone and said, "I'm recording." This is a dramatized story, but I need you to know this pattern is very real. I've seen too many nights that start with flashing blue lights and end with someone in my courtroom trying to explain how a simple phrase turned into handcuffs and a concussion. Miguel walked in wearing dark navy slacks and a white shirt that didn't quite fit across his shoulders. He sat at the defense table, back straight, fingers laced so tightly that his knuckles whitened. His lawyer, Ms. Carter, leaned in and whispered to him. I watched his lips move. "Yes, ma'am. I understand." On the other side, Assistant District Attorney Coates stacked his files with the precision of a man who likes everything in order. Gray suit, red tie, that permanent hint of impatience some prosecutors get when they think a case should have resolved at arraignment. And in the front row, with two officers flanking him like silent punctuation marks, sat Chief William Harlan. White shirt pressed so perfectly it looked starched onto him. Navy jacket, for gold stars at his collar. A service bar that could tell 3 decades of stories if it wanted to. I'd seen him in my courtroom before. Traffic fatality, drug raids, use of force hearings. Always the same posture, one arm draped over the bench in front of him, like he owned a piece of the room. He nodded to me when we began. A small, confident tilt of the chin. Harlan was not the defendant. But make no mistake, this was his case. His officers, his report, his reputation. And that's exactly why what happened next stopped the room cold. We started with the state's case. Call Officer Daniel Reese, ADA Coates announced. A young patrol officer took the stand. Fresh haircut. Uniform still a little too stiff. He swore in, voice catching just slightly on the words, "So help me God." Coates walked him through the night. We received a call of a suspected shoplifting in progress. The juvenile matched the description. He refused commands. The officer's version painted Miguel as a problem. He was yelling, Your Honor. He was shouting at us, You can't do that. I'm recording you. I know my rights. And the crowd started to gather. Did he ever physically interfere? I asked. The officer hesitated, looked toward the front row, just for a second. At Chief Harlan. Answer the court, officer, I said. He swallowed. He stepped closer, Your Honor. I perceived it as interfering. Miss Carter wrote something on her legal pad with a quick, sharp stroke. When it was her turn, she approached the stand with a thin stack of papers. Officer Reese, she began, you filed this report at 2:13 a.m., correct? Yes, ma'am. You wrote that Mr. Ramirez pushed against you. Those are your words. Yes, ma'am. She held up the paper. And you also checked the box marked resisted by force? Yes. She let that hang in the air just long enough for the silence to get heavy. Is it your testimony today? She asked quietly that a man standing 3 feet away, holding a phone, is the same as pushing against you? Reese glanced down, then toward the chief again. That tiny look told me more than his whole report, but the next details stopped the room cold. Officer Reese, Ms. Carter continued, you were wearing your department-issued body camera that night, correct? Yes. And department policy requires that camera to be activated during all enforcement encounters? Yes, ma'am. Was it activated? It malfunctioned. I leaned forward. Malfunctioned how? He shifted in the witness chair. Battery issue, Your Honor. Ms. Carter didn't argue. She didn't need to. She simply walked to her table, picked up a thin manila envelope, and returned to the stand. She slid a printed email under his nose. Is this your email to your sergeant, sent June 4th at 8:02 a.m.? Reese blinked. Yes. Could you read the highlighted sentence for the court? His voice dropped. Body cam was off because the scene didn't seem like a big deal at first. Silence. Then a soft murmur from the benches behind him. I saw it then, a muscle in Chief Harlan's jaw flexed. And when you wrote this email, Ms. Carter said, you did not mention any malfunction, correct? No, ma'am. That's because there was no malfunction, was there? He stared at the paper. No, ma'am. Coates sprang up. Objection, Your Honor, counsel is badgering the overruled, I said. The witness has already answered. Moments like this are where stories in my courtroom start to branch. Sometimes the truth limps in slowly. Sometimes it kicks the door open. This time, it was just getting warmed up. And if you appreciate seeing these cases from the judge's chair, seeing how power actually cracks and shifts in real time, this is where I'll invite you to subscribe. Not for me, but so you don't miss the next time someone forgets that the law applies to them too. Now back to Miguel. Because the real turning point wasn't that email. It was a video I wasn't supposed to see. By 10:02 a.m., we'd moved to the defense case. Defense calls Miguel Ramirez, Ms. Carter said. Miguel stood, smoothing his shirt, and walked to the stand with a slight limp. I noticed it. Short, careful steps. He swore in, voice soft but steady. Mr. Ramirez, Ms. Carter began, what do you do for a living? I'm a paramedic, he said. Riverton City EMS, Unit 5. How long? 5 years. Ever been arrested before this? No, ma'am. She let the jury, that invisible jury of public opinion watching through the camera lens, sit with that for a beat. Tell the court why you were outside the market stop on June 3rd. I was off shift. I stopped for milk and cereal. I saw the lights, heard yelling. I stepped outside and saw a kid on the ground. Did you interfere with the officers? I stayed back. I started recording. Why? Miguel looked right at me. Because people act different when they know they're being watched, Your Honor. Miss Carter reached for the manila envelope again. Not the thin one from earlier. A thicker one, edges worn like it had been handled and rehandled all night. Your Honor, she said, the defense moves to admit Defense Exhibit 7, video footage recorded by a bystander across the street. This was provided to us at 11:43 p.m. yesterday. Coates stood. Objection. We have not had sufficient time to review, and neither has the court, I said. But if the exhibit is relevant to the incident, I'm going to see it. Reluctantly, he sat. The bailiff dimmed the front lights. The screen at the side of the courtroom flickered on. Grainy nighttime footage filled the screen, blue and red lights bouncing off glass windows. A teenager on the ground, face pressed to asphalt. 2 officers above him. We could hear voices tinny over the phone mic. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting. Then another voice from off screen. Miguel's, I'm a paramedic. I'm just recording. The camera jostled. Miguel's phone view dipped toward the pavement, then back up. From the edge of the frame, a patrol SUV rolled in. The driver's door opened. And there he was. Not in a suit. Not in my courtroom. In the video, Chief Harlan was in tactical pants and a department polo, stepping into the scene like a man walking onto his own porch. He scanned the crowd. You could see him notice the phones. He walked directly toward the camera. Miguel's voice came through again. I'm just recording, Chief. The entire courtroom watched as the chief's face filled the screen, not the calm, practiced expression he wore in 3B. Something tighter. Harder. We heard it, clear as day. You want to record? Fine. Cuff him. Make sure the report's clean. Then the frame spun, the sound of a scuffle, Miguel's shout, and the phone view went sideways against the pavement. The overhead lights flicked back on. No one moved. What happened next made the whole courtroom go silent. I turned to Coates. Counsel, did the state receive a copy of that video? He cleared his throat. Your Honor, it was emailed late last night. We were still reviewing. Did your officers disclose its existence in discovery? A muscle jumped in his cheek. No, Your Honor. I shifted my gaze to the front row. Chief Harlan, I said, please approach the witness stand. He stood slowly, like the air had gotten thicker around him. His shoes clicked on the tile as he made his way forward, every eye on his back. Your Honor, Coates began, the chief is not a named witness. He is now, I said. The court reporter adjusted her machine. The little green light blinked on. Raise your right hand, Chief. He hesitated, just long enough for me to notice. Then he did. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do, he said. He sat, uniform creaking softly. Chief, I said evenly, is that you in Defense Exhibit 7? Yes, Your Honor. Is that your voice giving the instruction to cuff him and make sure the report's clean? He shifted. It sounds like me. Is it you? Yes, Your Honor. Behind him, I heard someone exhale. A long, slow breath they didn't know they'd been holding. And when you said, make sure the report's clean, what did you mean? I meant accurate. Thorough. I leaned back. Is that what your officer's report is, Chief? Accurate. Yes, Your Honor. We had just watched the gap between his words and reality, projected at 1080p resolution. If you're still with me here, I'd like you to hit like or tell me in the comments what you think. Make sure the report's clean really meant in that moment, because how you answer that question says a lot about how you see power. But stick with me, because the worst thing he did that day wasn't on that video. It was what he did next. In my courtroom, we resumed Miguel's testimony. The chief stepped down from the stand, but stayed right there in the front row, arms crossed, jaw tight. Miguel's voice trembled a little now, but he kept going. Mr. Ramirez, Miss Carter asked, what happened to you physically when you were taken into custody? I hit my head, he said. My shoulder. I woke up in the hospital. Concussion. Torn ligament. Did anyone read you your rights before you were placed in the patrol car? No, ma'am. Did you strike any of the officers? No, ma'am. I put my hands out when they grabbed me, so I wouldn't fall. I told them I was dizzy. I told them I was a medic. They told me. He stopped. Swallowed. They told you what? He looked down at his hands. They told me. Should have thought of that before you played lawyer. That's when it happened. A bark of laughter from the front row. Sharp. Disbelieving. I turned my head. Chief Harlan was smiling. Actually smiling. He made no effort to hide it. The officers beside him stared straight ahead, faces carefully blink. I'd seen smirks, eye rolls, quiet scoffs, but a laugh at that moment in this room. Everyone stop, I said, my voice cutting through the air. Miss Carter froze mid-step. Coates half rose, then Saturday, Chief Harlan, I said, stand up. He did, slowly, the smile fading, but not gone. There's a way some people stand in court, not as citizens, but as owners. You learn to recognize it. Did you just laugh? I asked. Your Honor, yes or no? He straightened. Yes, Your Honor. I reacted. It was reflex. Reflex, I repeated. To what? To the idea that my officers would say something like that. It's absurd. I let the silence grow. You understand, Chief, that this man is under oath? That he is describing the night he says he was unjustly arrested on your orders? Yes, Your Honor. And you found that funny. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No, Your Honor. The record will reflect that the chief of police laughed during the defendant's testimony about alleged misconduct, I said. Chief, you will remain standing. His face reddened. The ribbons on his chest seemed to vibrate with his pulse. I lowered my voice so that every word landed. This is not a locker room. It is not a squad car. It is not a bar where stories get better the more someone is humiliated. This is a court of law. And while you are in here, you will behave like every other citizen under its authority. Do you understand me? Yes, Your Honor, he said, eyes fixed on some point on the back wall. I wasn't done. You came into my courtroom today in full dress uniform. For stars. You brought your rank in here with you, as if it entitled you to something more than the man on that stand. It does not. In this room, you are not chief. You are Mr. Harlan. Is that clear? He swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. For the first time that morning, he looked small. Not because I wanted to make him small, but because the truth finally stripped away the armor he'd wrapped himself in. And let me be absolutely clear, I said. If you disrupt these proceedings again, I will hold you in contempt. I have jailed teenagers for less. I will not hesitate to do the same to you. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the faint buzz of the exit sign. Sit down, I said. He did, carefully. We turned back to Miguel. Mr. Ramirez, I said gently, you may continue. By 11:06 a.m., the evidence was closed. Miguel sat at the table, shoulders slumped, like the act of telling the story had drained whatever was holding him upright. The chief stared at the floor. Coates shuffled his papers, but didn't really read them. Miss Carter stood with her hands flat on the table, waiting. This was a bench trial. No jury. The decision was mine. I took a breath. On the charge of disorderly conduct, I began. The court finds the defendant, Miguel Ramirez, not guilty. Miguel's eyes closed. Just for a second. On the charge of obstruction of official business, not guilty. On the charge of resisting arrest, not guilty. A low murmur swept the benches, quickly dying out when I lifted my gaze. But we are not finished, I said. I turned to the state. Counsel, the court is issuing an order to show cause why sanctions should not be imposed for failure to disclose material evidence, specifically, Defense Exhibit 7. You will respond in writing within 14 days. Coates nodded, jaw tight. Yes, Your Honor. Then I looked at the front row. Mr. Harlan, please stand again. He rose, slower this time. The video we saw today, combined with the inconsistency in Officer Reese's report and email, raises serious questions about the accuracy of official reports submitted to this court, I said. Accordingly, I am referring this matter to the Civilian Review Board and the State Attorney General's Office for investigation. His lips parted. Your Honor, I do not argue with me, I said, voice steady. You had your chance to testify. You used that chance to minimize your words on that video. The process will now move beyond this courtroom. I paused. And Chief, if you ever find yourself tempted to laugh in a courtroom again, remember this morning. Remember that the people sitting in these chairs are not characters in a story you control. They are citizens. And the weight of your badge does not entitle you to their humiliation. His shoulders sagged, some invisible load finally settling where it belonged. You may sit, I said. 2 weeks later, I read in a brief that the Civilian Review Board had opened a formal inquiry into the June 3rd arrest and 3 other incidents Miguel's case had brought to light. Within 6 months, Chief Harlan retired early. The press release called it a planned transition. But everyone in Riverton knew what day the plan had really started to change. The morning he laughed in courtroom 3B, Miguel went back to work. One afternoon, months later, I saw him in the hallway outside another courtroom, in uniform this time. He just brought in a patient from a heart scare upstairs. He caught my eye. Your Honor, he said, I just wanted to say, thank you. I shook my head. You don't know me, thanks, Mr. Ramirez. You were brave enough to stand up and testify to what happened. That's what made the difference. He hesitated. I still flinch when I see a squad car in my rear view, he admitted. I'd be worried if you didn't, I said. Healing takes time. So does accountability. He nodded, then jogged off toward the elevator, radio crackling at his hip. Stories like this in this video are dramatized names, details, and places changed. But the dynamics? The power? The way a single laugh can reveal everything about how someone sees the people they serve? That part is all too real. In more than 2 decades on this bench, I've learned something simple and uncomfortable. People in power rarely announce when they've crossed the line. They don't wave a flag and shout, "I'm abusing my authority now." Sometimes they just write a careful report. Sometimes they forget to turn on a camera. Sometimes they laugh at the wrong moment. Accountability isn't about hating the police or loving them blindly. It's about insisting that anyone who carries a badge, a title, or a gavel understands this. In a courtroom, nobody stands above the truth. Miguel walked in that morning as a defendant. He walked out a free man. But the real victory wasn't just his acquittal. It was the message, etched into the record, that uniforms don't come with a sense of humor exemption when someone else's freedom is on the line. And grace? Grace doesn't mean looking away. Sometimes, grace is giving a man in uniform a chance to hear no in a place where he's only ever heard, "Yes, Chief." What you do with power when someone tells you no, that's who you really are. If this case gripped you, if watching a police chief forget where he was and who he served made you feel something, there's another story I want you to see next. It's about a public defender who walked into my courtroom with one file, no witnesses, and a truth so explosive it turned an entire plea deal upside down in under 3 minutes. Click on that video next, and I'll show you exactly how one sentence from a rookie attorney forced an entire system to admit it was wrong. Because in this courtroom, the story isn't over. Not yet.